Kholo, we're going to talk about an exciting deal which really presents wealth creation opportunities for the majority of South Africans, and that is SAB Zenzele Gabili. Now, I understand that Zenzele was the initial investment platform in BEE scheme that started off primarily looking to provide SAB's staff, retail partners, and a few of the other stakeholders with an opportunity to own a stake in the company. But things have shifted, and this is going to now list on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in the form of Gabili. Give us some perspective as to how this particular BEE deal has evolved over the last 10, maybe now 11 years.
Just in terms of talking about the new deal, so it's a new 5.4 billion rand transaction. So that will all own shares in AB InBev, so that basically is the global company, where else the previous deal was only sort of like focused on South Africa, but specifically at the SAB level. The new deal is structured in the form of vendor funding, so vendor funding provided by SAB. It's provided at very competitive rates, so 70% of prime. So if you look at the current prime rate at 7%, that gives you an effective cost of about 4.9% per annum. It's got a funding term of 10 years, so this basically provides it, provides the share price an opportunity to be able to increase over that time. I think it will be open to the public. It will be listed on the BEE exchange, as you mentioned. So essentially, that allows sort of like all qualifying shareholders basically to be able to trade in those shares. And it means that the existing shareholders are essentially not locked in, so they can actually trade their shares and actually, realize liquidity, in relation to those shares. And another important feature is around the trickle dividend. So it will have a 25% trickle dividend. So every time Zenzele Gabili receives a dividend, so 25% of those amounts would actually trickle through to shareholders, actually giving them some cash flow, from over the term.
And I guess that's important for us to understand that not only is there benefit further down the road for these investors, but how the deal has been structured is to provide them with, I guess, additional support in terms of the stake that they can own through Zenzele Gabili in AB InBev, and that speaks to the debt structure. Are these technicalities that make it slightly different from the initial offering?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think with this one, what we've got basically, because of how the old deal is actually unwound, we've been able to capture some of the value that has been created for the SAB Foundation as well as the retailer shareholders in the form of a reinvestment. So they're going to they're going to invest some equity into the structure. So that forms 30% of the capital structure. The other component is essentially a contribution from SAB. So that equates to 15% of the structure, and the balance is essentially the vendor funding at 55% of the structure. So the structure itself, because of the the equity contribution as well as the discount, is actually quite conservatively geared. So we hope that essentially that will increase the likelihood of it delivering value in due course.
It sounds like a win-win situation if you look at the client that RMB is serving, being SAB Zenzele Gabili, providing them with an opportunity to really meet their targets of driving transformation in South Africa, and on the other hand, qualifying South Africans given the opportunity to invest here. But explain to us, what was RMB's role? How did RMB come together to form such a structure and make it as beneficial for all parties involved?
Yes. So in terms of our role, so we were involved basically in sort of like the unwind of the original deal. So this is the one that is delivering 9.7 billion rand in value. That's huge. Yes, no, absolutely. And if you look at it sort of on a per retailer basis, so a person who invested 100 rand in 2010 is due to receive about 77,000 rand by the time all of the payouts are actually done, which is actually a remarkable equity growth in terms of from an investment perspective. So I think so that component we were able to last year, I think sort of like in April, through our equity capital markets team, working together with RMB Morgan Stanley, we were able to do a placement of shares to the tune of 7.5 billion rand in order to, you know, monetize those shares and actually create, you know, part of that payout. You know, the other component was essentially the, you know, around the advisory that we actually provided actually into the deal around the actual deal structuring itself, as well as also on the transaction sponsor side. So our sponsor team is actually the, you know, the transaction sponsor for, you know, for Zenzele Kabili in relation to the actual listing. So almost, you know, a one-stop shop, you know, coming through all the way from the unwind as well as basically through into the into the actual listing.
Sounds like a great partnership in terms of meeting all the needs that the client has. But trick question for you, will you be at the listing blowing the kudu horn and participating in the celebrations later?
We're very excited. I think we're looking forward to how actually, you know, the reception. I mean, already there's been, you know, quite a lot of interest, lots of questions coming through. So we'll just see how that actually unfolds into the trading process.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Lots of growth and prosperity all around in opening up investment opportunities to the large majority of South African citizens. Thanks again, Kholo.